Number 1. The Touch of Little Hands.
I've never encountered a haunted house myself, but the terrifying stories I heard from my mother about her teenage years remain etched in my memory. In her youth, my mother resided in a neighborhood where inexplicable occurrences were disturbingly common. Eerily enough, it wasn't just her own home that was plagued by strange phenomena. It seemed like an unsettling veil hung over the entire street. One particular family, residing a few houses down from my mother's, experienced an especially unsettling tragedy. One fateful evening, the daughter of that household went to bed, complaining of a severe headache. Tragically, by the following day, she had succumbed to an aneurysm, leaving her family devastated by the sudden loss. After the heart-wrenching funeral, the grieving family decided to take a break from the somber environment to clear their minds. They entrusted my uncle, who happened to be my mother's brother, with the responsibility of looking after their pets during their absence. Eager for an adventure and intrigued by the prospect of playing a grand piano rumored to be in that house, my mother and her then-boyfriend, my father, joined my uncle on this peculiar errand. It's worth noting that my father was in the midst of pursuing a veterinary career at the time. As they entered the house, my uncle and father made their way to the basement to check on the animals, while my mother gravitated towards the alluring grand piano situated on the ground floor. As her fingers danced across the keys, she couldn't help but immerse herself in the haunting melody of the instrument. Little did she know that the true haunting was about to unfold. Midway through her impromptu piano performance, my mother suddenly felt a mysterious sensation, like something brushing against her ankles. Initially dismissing it as the innocent presence of a curious cat that might have ventured out from the basement, she continued to play. But then, it happened again, and this time, the touch was more pronounced, sending shivers down her spine. Curiosity swiftly turned into dread as she peered beneath the piano, only to discover nothing amiss. Undeterred, she resumed her playing, only to be met with an even more unsettling development. A pair of invisible hands, icy cold and insistent, clamped onto her legs with a vice-like grip. Terrified beyond words, she sprinted to the basement door, frantically summoned my uncle and father, and stood there, trembling with fear. Once they were safely back outside, my uncle noticed the sheer terror in my mother's eyes and inquired about the source of her distress. She recounted her harrowing encounter, and as the blood drained from my uncle's face, he divulged a shocking revelation. It turned out that the deceased daughter of the family who had inhabited the house had a peculiar habit. When her father played the piano, she would sneak underneath it, grab onto his ankles, and playfully manipulate his feet to make the pedals dance up and down.
Number 2. The Haunted Ambulance.
The ambulance service I used to be a part of had an intriguing legend surrounding one particular vehicle. Ambulance 12 shares an individual on an online forum. Numerous fellow EMTs had their own eerie tales associated with it, but I had always been skeptical about anything paranormal. However, my perspective drastically shifted after a spine-chilling encounter involving Rig 12. My partner and I were stationed in a remote rural area during the dead of night, encompassed by an abyss of darkness and profound silence. Both of us had succumbed to drowsiness. I occupied the driver's seat, while my colleague dozed off in the passenger seat. I abruptly awoke to the sound of a muted voice, assuming it was my partner mumbling in her sleep. Annoyed, I informed her that I was attempting to get some rest and closed my eyes again. Then, I distinctly heard a male voice utter, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by several seconds of labored breathing. Instantly, my partner and I bolted upright, swiveling our heads to gaze into the patient compartment from whence the voice appeared to originate. For a brief moment, all was eerily silent. But then, a sudden click emanated from the oxygen bottle regulator, accompanied by a hiss as if the valve was slowly leaking. Panic surged through me as I flicked on the lights, and we hastily exited the vehicle. My initial thought was that perhaps a homeless person or transient had clandestinely entered the ambulance while we were asleep. With trembling hands, we swung open the rear doors to investigate, only to discover an empty patient compartment devoid of any intruders. I nervously inspected the oxygen bottles, confirming that neither had been tampered with or opened. Needless to say, our night's rest was considerably disturbed after that bone-chilling episode.
Number 3. The Ignorant Ghost.
My name is Bella, my dear friend Sarah, and I shared a remarkable supernatural experience for several years, and we affectionately referred to our mischievous specter as Charlie. It all began with Sarah's intriguing account on a popular online forum where she shared our extraordinary ghostly encounters. I'd return home and stumble upon bizarre occurrences, Sarah recounted. Milk mysteriously stored in the cupboard, toilet paper chilling in the fridge, and laundry detergent inexplicably placed in the bathtub. One day, I received a frantic call from Sarah, desperately inquiring if Charlie had paid her a visit because she couldn't locate a gallon of milk. To our astonishment, we eventually discovered it perched on her back doorstep. And then there was the sugar saga. Every single morning, my sugar bowl was mysteriously emptied. Exasperated by Charlie's antics, I resorted to a peculiar tactic. I would point at Sarah's residence and holler, "Go see Sarah!" Remarkably, within mere minutes, I would receive a phone call from her exclaiming, "Thanks a lot." Charlie had once again indulged in his mischievous escapades at her place. This uncanny phenomenon persisted for the entire 2-year duration of our cohabitation in that peculiar house. Strangely, no one around us seemed to take our stories seriously, not even our husbands. Sarah's mother was convinced that someone was pilfering our possessions while we slept or were away from home, and my sister, while acknowledging that something unusual was happening, couldn't quite fathom the nature of these perplexing events. Even to this day, I remain utterly baffled and mystified, unable to offer a plausible explanation for any of it.
Number 4. The Mysterious Attic.
Sharing their most spine-chilling ghostly encounter, one that unfolded in a place seemingly attuned to the benevolent spirits of the afterlife, they couldn't help but remark on the ironic beginnings of many ghost stories with the phrase, "I don't believe in ghosts, but..." It was an irony, they believed, that stemmed from the undeniable truth that, deep down, we all harbor a belief in the existence of the supernatural. Several years ago, I embarked on a journey to a 1-bedroom apartment nestled in the heart of Melbourne, Australia. This marked my first foray into independent living, and the apartment building itself had a storied history, having been erected during the 1930s. After a few months of settling in, I encountered something inexplicable that sent shivers down my spine. I had returned home from work one fateful day, and upon entering the bathroom, my gaze was drawn to a curious sight. A thick wooden board, previously covering a ceiling aperture that led to a small attic, lay shattered in two upon the floor. It was a solid piece of timber, the kind of material that would require a feat of superhuman strength to fracture. panic washed over me as I contemplated the chilling possibility that someone or something had breached the attic's secrecy. I promptly sent pictures of the broken board to my landlord, coupled with a hint of irritation stemming from her failure to forewarn me about any potential renovations. In response, she urged me to call her immediately. Over the phone, she revealed that the last 2 tenants had reported identical incidents. She promised to replace the board, a promise she dutifully fulfilled. A month later, an eerie night unfolded, and I found myself jolted awake around 4 a.m. Goosebumps prickled my skin as an uncanny sensation washed over me, as though an unseen hand were caressing my form. All was eerily quiet, but then a disconcerting noise emanated from above my bed. A dragging sound, akin to someone laboriously hauling a weighty object. Paralyzed by fear, I became convinced that an intruder lurked within the attic's confines. No animal could produce such an ominous cacophony. After 5 agonizing minutes, I mustered the courage to illuminate the room, armed with a cricket bat, and ventured toward the bathroom. It was then that I beheld the horrifying sight of the recently replaced board, now splintered in twain. A sickening dread gripped me as the dragging sound ceased, replaced by another disquieting phenomenon, an eerie whispering that emanated from the attic. The voices, chillingly childlike, repeated a single phrase in an unending loop. "It's your turn. It's your turn." In my desperation to restore a semblance of normality, I bathed the apartment in a cascade of light, despite the early hour. Darkness still reigned outside, and I sought solace in the glow of the television. Yet my respite was short-lived as a sudden power outage plunged me into darkness once more. My pet budgie, Dexter, usually a silent companion during the night, now squawked in abject terror, his cries echoing with a newfound eerie intensity. I had never heard such sounds from him. It was as if he were being strangled. Panicking, I grabbed my car keys, rushed out of the apartment, and took refuge within my vehicle, awaiting the arrival of dawn. Only when I glimpsed the reassuring sight of early morning dog walkers did I muster the courage to re-enter my home. The front door was oddly ajar, though I attributed it to my hasty departure in the throes of fear. With a heavy heart, I proceeded to check on Dexter in the kitchen, only to discover him submerged in the toilet, gasping for air. Incredulous and horrified, I retrieved him, carefully cleansing and drying him. My bewilderment knew no bounds. At 8 a.m., I dialed my landlord, providing her with a watered-down account of the night's terrors. To my astonishment, her response carried a hint of recognition. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too," she exclaimed. I continued to inhabit that enigmatic apartment for another 18 months, occasionally bearing witness to the haunting whispers and, on 2 unnerving occasions, witnessing the inexplicable movement of the board covering the attic entrance. Although I have since relocated, my landlord recently reached out, informing me that the newest tenants have urgently requested to discuss the eerie occurrences within the confines of that enigmatic attic. As for me, I have chosen to leave those haunting memories behind, for it is now their enigma to unravel.
Number 5. The Boy with No Eyes.
One fateful night, as a 10-year-old, I found myself abruptly awakened by the creaking of my bedroom door. A shiver ran down my spine as I heard someone, or something, settle onto the edge of my bed. In my half-awake state, I felt a gentle touch on my leg, and the mattress depress under the weight of an unseen presence. My immediate assumption was that it was my mother, checking in on me. Trusting in this familiar presence, I reluctantly opened my eyes. To my astonishment, the figure seated at the foot of my bed was not my mother. Instead, I was met with the unsettling sight of a boy about my own age, with hollow, pitch-black sockets where his eyes should have been. My heart raced as he extended his hand towards me, clutching a small box. Confusion and fear coursed through me, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I reached out to take the box. However, as I made my move, he withdrew his hand. Determined to understand this enigmatic visitor, I reached out once more, firmly stating, "Give it." In an inexplicable instant, I blinked, and when my eyes opened again, the eyeless boy had vanished into thin air. All that remained was the indented impression on my bed where he had been sitting. Fast forwarding 5 years, my girlfriend came over one day to work on some homework. After finishing her tasks, she decided to take a nap while awaiting her parents' arrival. As she lay there, her eyes suddenly snapped open, fixating on a particular corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed towards it and then drifted back into sleep. Startled, I shook her awake, demanding an explanation for her peculiar behavior. She seemed visibly shaken and recounted her experience. Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there, in a Spider-Man pose, staring at me. Her words sent a shiver down my spine, prompting me to share my own eerie encounter with the eyeless boy from years ago. Another 5 years passed, and I was still with the same girlfriend, now with a 2-year-old child. We were residing in my parents' house, back in my old room. Strangely, our daughter began to wake up at the same time every night, engaging in what seemed like repetitive conversations. One night, curiosity got the best of me, and I playfully inquired about her nighttime chatter. With an innocent smile, she responded, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mommy." These nightly exchanges continued until we eventually moved into our own place later that year, leaving behind the mysterious presence of the eyeless visitor, who seemed to have an inexplicable connection with our lives.